one of these episodes you talked about like not feeling like you could show up in that space,
Right.
you know, and speak to your experience, that you didn't think that was valid enough. Well, I just want to say to everybody that you are enough.
Yes.
Whoever you are is beautiful just the way you are. And we're so glad that you are here. And that authenticity is your superpower.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like that is what's going to like open up so many doors, because who you are is your gift. And that's what's going to help you connect with your youth. That's going to help you show up in so many beautiful ways in your community. Yeah.
So I'm Alejandro.
I'm Mordecai.
And I'm Chrissy.
And
we're
Youthera.
Welcome back, right?
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah.
Episode 6.
Our last
It is
podcast
it is
episode.
the one for this.
For now, anyway.
For this
For meow.
season.
For this season.
Yeah, we'll go season 1, episode 6.
If our listeners have enjoyed and loved this is your opportunity to comment and say you want the podcast to continue.
Yes.
If not, we'll just say you forgot and take that.
Yeah.
But what did we talk about last time, and what are we getting ourselves into today?
Yeah.
So we went into wellness.
Uh-huh.
8 dimensions of wellness, specifically.
All right.
Self-care.
We were really trying to talk about the realities of burnout.
Yeah.
That it's definitely real, and there are things within those dimensions and practices to try and etc. that can help with that burnout when it's experienced.
And I think, which leads into the wonderful segue of what we're talking about today, is just like with wellness, with like the avoidance of burnout, or learning how to, I'll say it, combat burnout. We're talking about success, and then what the building blocks of success are, and how it's not just like a one size fits all model. It's everyone's definition of success is going to be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So I just want to get all of your definitions of what success is, just so we can kind of show that it is different.
I guess success to me, when I think about peer support anyway, and like kind of just this whole journey, I think success is like a daily commitment. So I feel if you in your day have really strived to either just be the best version of yourself, you're continuing your education, you are trying to find ways to network, trying to find ways to advocate, whatever it might be, success is moving forward. And there's no timeline for that. It's like whatever you feel is like getting there. So just having those goals and meeting goals, I guess, would be success for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a complicated relationship with success, because I feel like on some level it is about meeting certain marks that I have for myself, like doing certain things that I want to be doing, but also like holding that in compassion for like just honoring the journey too. Mm-hmm. So on some level it like contradicts of like being at the end goal, but success can also just be, what did you take away from the whole thing? Because sometimes the end goal isn't necessarily where the lesson actually is and where the success really lives.
Yeah.
So.
Well said.
I like that. I'm going to take both of your answers and kind of put it in mine. It's that success is like your ability to have motivation to do anything.
Yeah.
If I'm not growing, then I can't truly be successful. And success and achievement are truly different things for me. Success is the process, achievement is the reward. So with all of that, even with like failure, there's still success and failure, similar to what you were saying before, is that it's what did I get and what did I learn from that to be able to grow and move forward within that quote unquote failure or that roadblock or barrier. How can I learn to adapt for the next time that I come up in this situation? And how can I be more successful or increase that longevity of success before I get back into that roadblock? And then how can I have that achievement within that journey of success?
Heck yeah. Love that. Yeah.
That was a lot, man.
No, it was
Blocked
like
out
it was
there
a
for
great
second.
like little summary of it. It was perfect. Yeah. It reminds me of the hats that youth there I used to have. They said celebrate failure. And it was because it's like literally it's a part of the success process. Anytime you have failure, you're really just moving on to the next step.
Right. It's that upward spiral. Like when we think of like the stages of change, like, you know, it's, you don't just go through it and like you go through it again and again and again. And it's just on the same level. Like we visualize it as a 3D model, like you're moving up because every time that you go around and, you know, you're creating a plan for how you want to change and you're, you know, maintaining it, you're learning every single time.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's,
back and I'm better.
Yeah.
I'm back and I'm better. Yeah.
Let's hope for sure.
Yeah. I feel like that resiliency also plays a really big spot on like what it can mean to be successful. Like if I got that setback, I'm more resilient now. I learned how to move forward in that. Right. And now I'm back, I'm stronger. Right. And every other pop song that mentions that, but it's true. As cheesy and jokingly as that was said, is that like every setback that I have pushes me forward and more forward for the next time that I have this adverse experience or this challenging experience.
Agreed.
Gives me like Onion vibes, which is kind of weird to say it that way, but like, you know, like there's always like layers to things. Like you go through the first layer and you think, oh yeah, I got this. And then you realize, oh, there's another layer underneath of this. And you're like, oh, okay. And then there's another layer and you're like, oh, okay. You know, and you're like learning all the levels of still like crying. This experience. Yeah, totally. Right. Those onion fumes, just like, oh, yeah. But that's the beauty is that we always have an opportunity to be learning, which really ties into our work because not only are we like learning, I mean, day to day in our interactions with like our youth that we're working with, but we're just having the opportunity to grow as an individual as well. So
yes,
deeper and deeper and deeper.
So with that, let's talk about some barriers that there are to success. Because in this line of work, there are a lot of barriers on all fronts, whether it be personal or systematic or just like organizational even.
Yeah.
So what can that kind of look like?
Well, I think, you know, if we're thinking about like that organizational support, right, that would be did we say building blocks yet? I don't know. Okay, building block. So if we're thinking about a building block for success, that organizational support is so important, that networking piece. So things that I think we found that get in the way of that can be staffing, funding. If you're a small organization, maybe a baby organization, so you're like, you know, brand new to the field, just a baby. I love that Mordecai pointed this one out earlier. It's like rural versus urban spaces. Perhaps lacking knowledge of where to find support or have a cohort, right? We know through doing our coaching and training that there's a lot of peers out there who they're the only peer within maybe like a clinical model or an organization. So just thinking about that. And then sometimes a barrier can be if you're not taken seriously in your role.
So, okay, yes, there's all these barriers, right? But like living in a dualistic world, there's also like the things that can be empowering as well, right? So like, yes, these barriers can exist. Like maybe we're the only one in this rural town that is serving this whole community of people, right? Now what? Like, what does somebody do with that information? How do they stay empowered in that? Because there is this, we know that there is also the other side of things too. So,
yeah, I like that. It's like the pendulum.
Yeah.
You know, it's swinging. We know that these things exist, but there's also steps that you can take towards feeling empowered in that.
Right. Have you all felt that before? Like maybe a bit alone in your organization or like maybe not even just in like your organization, but in your role, like not having like other people who were in a similar job that you could like talk to and connect to about what you do?
I mean, I can speak for sure on the not being taken seriously in my role as a former wraparound youth partner before I got into this position. I was working with a family and like I was talking to the mom and introducing myself as I do my due diligence.
Yeah.
And she was just like, okay, so like he has an older brother. So what makes you so special? And I was like, well, like I got like this lived experience, and I also went to college for like studying how to work with youth and like sociology and all of this. And then she's like, okay, so you think that you're just better than all of us because you went to college? And I was like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. And she's just like, well, you're pretty much just the babysitter at this point until you prove that you are actually helping in some way, shape, or form. And it was just like, whoa, tearing me down.
Yeah, that's tougher.
But
Yikes, yeah.
I'm also like just in the nature that I am is I love I'm competitive. Yeah. So I took that as like a challenge of just like, okay, I'm not going to tell you at this point in time that you're wrong, but I have to show you that you're kind of wrong in that mentality. It's just like I'm here to benefit not only your son or your youth, right? Mm-hmm. I'm here to benefit the family structure as a whole. I'm here to also support you. Like, granted, I am a youth partner, but I am also here to support and advocate for the family as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have to show you that. I can't just tell you that.
Right. Yeah.
Because the system alone has told that family like, hey, we're here to support you. And they've been let down time and time again. So why should you trust me and trust that I can do anything? I got to be the one to like show that support and show that I can do that.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like that leading by example that I have to do. And I think that is also like that kind of ties into everything else that's also a barrier. You have to be shown that I can trust everything and every step that's there.
Yes.
So you spoke to like kind of like earning their trust through showing them. For a second, I was like, oh, all right, taking note, Alejandro is driven by spite. Okay.
I live on spite.
But actually, no, it's really like just trying to, because we understand that we are working with a lot of system wary folks.
Yes.
And so how can we like help earn their trust and like show them that, yes, like I'm here to help, and it might look different than what you expect, but like it's a process and we'll get there.
Yeah. You know? And it was a long road, but we eventually were like comfortable enough to work with each other, and the family would be like, okay, yeah, he's got this. Like he can speak on behalf of my youth. I feel comfortable with them doing that. Cool. But it was a long process to do so. So that's achievement and success to me. It's the process and the achievement from it.
I know. I really enjoyed how you just told that, because it literally illustrated the whole kind of like journey of it. It's like, you faced the barrier, which the barrier was not being taken seriously in your role. But I guess for the listeners, like the key takeaway there is like you understood, okay, system wariness. And then instead of letting it just defeat you, you became empowered. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you chose to kind of follow the principles of wraparound, staying persistent and just knowing that they know their experience. And so I think that was an elegant way of just like painting it out,
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah. Connecting
the dots. Yeah.
Totally. Okay. So not being taken seriously. So we figured out some empowerment aspect, which part of that is literally just time. Right?
Yeah. It was time, and then also like staffing with my supervisor and also my cohorts of just like, hey, what have you done in this situation where like if you have to gain the trust of the youth and also the parent, right? And how do you navigate that? And it's getting that support from my coworkers and my supervisor to be like, hey, this is what I'm able to do. Yeah. Here's some strategies that you can do, and talking and like nonviolent communication and being persistent and following those principles, but also like what can those conversations look like? And if you're met with this barrier, here's how I've done it in my own experience. Give that a try. And so it's just like having that openness and that availability to talk about the struggles that I'm having in my work, and then getting the support from the people around me who are also going through that same thing.
I love that.
Totally. As like a background being in like online youth peer support, like I didn't have any other like coworkers who were doing the same work that I was at this time, because this was pre-pandemic, when I was like brand new to it. And so I really relied on my supervisor to like help guide me and to like help me feel like less alone in what I was experiencing, and like just like learning the language sometimes of even supporting somebody and like how to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So I feel like leaning on what supports that you do have available within your own organization is really important. And hopefully your supervisor has already been either a peer or is pretty well like knowledgeable about that. Yeah. Granted, I know that that's not everybody's experience, but hopefully they'll still be able to guide you in a really helpful way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you all are like really hitting on some of these empowerment pieces. I think one that I would like to talk on is like advocacy for policy change.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, at some point in time, when it comes to peer support, policy has changed and policy has been able to be impacted by people using their voices. And so like, if you think about it, so for Oregon, hello listeners, when you become a peer, right, you have to take, or when you become a youth peer support, you have to take the Oregon Health Authority approved training. If you're going to be a wraparound youth partner, you have to go through the wraparound foundational training, right? And these are things that are in Oregon administrative rules, meaning their law. So I would love to see, or I feel like an empowering piece could be, if you are a peer, that you find spaces where you share your experience and you share any of these barriers that you are going through, kind of like system of care, right? You share those barriers out of hope that those barriers would go up and that they'd be fixed or changed. And so I think a big piece of it could be working towards policy change and knowing your experience as a peer really matters, and finding a way, I guess, to utilize that experience to implement policy change. That'd be awesome.
I do have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
Out of the policy change that is here, there's a lot going on with just all the policies.
Yeah.
They are daunting. It is a lot to look at, and like the OARs, or the Oregon Administrative, what was it?
Rules.
I keep wanting to say code because that's.
I kind of like code better, but yeah.
But like, what policy changes would you want to advocate for?
Oh, 100%. Thank you for asking me. I would say I would want to advocate for education. So for peers. So it's like literally it's built into your grants, your contracts, whatever, that is talking about like continuing education, and with a lens of like wanting to make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion was in there, cultural responsivity, getting more around like facilitation and talking, life coaching even, right? There's a lot of stuff, but basically that it would be a requirement and a part of your job that you are paid and you're seen as someone to get that education. Mordecai told me today, and you both told me that, therapists, they have to have their own therapist. That blew my mind, and I didn't know that. So thinking about us, we're working with youth on the daily and hearing like their experiences. So maybe I would like to see policy that reflects, that we get our own therapists, or we get, or that's covered in some way.
Accessible mental health care.
Accessible mental health care. Yeah, exactly. Those are just a few things. I mean, there's a lot I could think of, but those are some really, like, I feel like important things, and even things we're going to talk about later that could change someone's life and also help with that work-life balance and help with these barriers to success. And maybe we wouldn't see as high turnover in peers if those things were present.
Yeah.
Man, education is power.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, on so many levels, but to know that you are equipped with the skills to like show up in your role in a more effective way. I think that's super important. I love what you said too about like policy changes around just the mental health care of peers, because I think that's really important if you want to have a sustainable, workforce, if you will.
Yeah.
That they feel taken care of, appreciated, that they have adequate access to benefits that they need to.
Great question. Thanks for asking that.
Yeah. I mean, I have a follow-up of the follow-up.
Okay.
Because like, while all of these things are great, and I truly am in full support of all of these things, hearing it as like an outside listener or someone who's new into this, it could be like, cool, that's awesome. I totally agree. How the hell do I do it?
Well, I think in my experience, it's been a lot of networking has been a big piece to it, as far as like, especially system of care wise, because if you can get in touch with your local system of care, you're going to be already in touch with people who impact policy. So that's probably a way. Going to the state level system of cares. Mm-hmm. Now, we've talked about how sometimes you only get the last couple of minutes of the meeting. And if you can use that time to express and say, hey, the peers have come together, they're saying they need these changes, etc. And I guess in a lot of ways, maybe we could be at Youth Era, we could be the example and try to implement policy change somehow. Like we could start to attend SOCAC and be an example and see how easy/hard it is.
And with that acronym, SOCAC is the System of Care Advisory Council.
Yeah, and that's when I say SOCAC, I do mean the state level one, the governor appointed one.
Yeah.
Which I think, I mean, that just brings to mind, I don't know how much we've talked about system of care so far, but I feel like, right, we didn't know about this for way too long, like system of care even being a thing. And it's something that I've been trying to like educate people on in just like my personal life, to be like, did you know that there is this thing that's in place to help you get your voice heard so that we can change the barriers and accesses to services that, you know, affect each and every single one of us? Like, you know, do you know that this exists in our community right now? They're like, what? No.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, which is like wild. So I feel like it's really important that we are, one, if you know about those spaces, like taking advantage of those spaces. But secondly, I would love to be on the lookout for even more of those spaces that maybe I'm just not privy to. Like, if that's literally just writing letters to our like state government or something and just like getting it right into somebody's inbox so that way it's like right in front of them.
Well, I remember when we were, I don't remember how many Peer Pluses back, but we were talking pretty passionately about system of care. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to put out this Google form. And if you guys want to be on a council together, and that's kind of what YSS Connection Zone, the Zoom space is, and maybe will form too. But like, that's a place where you've got not just Youth Era staff, but you have different youth peer support specialists. That is a perfect example of where you could gather the voice, turn it into data, present that data at a place like system of care, and push it forward to be a policy change. Now, I will also say, because you asked me how is it possible or how can it get done, is other council spaces. Like I have an email right now that says, hey, we're looking for people to join this advisory council on crisis response. So say there was something like, hey, we're trying to talk about OARs or we're trying to talk about this, getting into those spaces, which I don't, you know, other than having the jobs we have, I don't know how folks from a community would learn that unless we share it out to the community.
Yeah. And I think I also want to plug it real quick. Well, the YSS Connection Zone and the ones that we've had here, it has been a super safe place to just air out all the barriers that you've gone through within your position. And we work together collaboratively, as best practices would say, but also just like in terms of just who we are as an organization and as people, we want to help from like the most genuine way possible. We want to hear what your concerns and what your struggles are. And we want to provide you with the resources that we have on hand or what other people in the room also have to help you surpass this barrier.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So not only do we acknowledge that a barrier exists, but like also who else has faced this and like how have you overcome this or how have you managed this to try to, because we're not the knowledge keepers.
Right,
we're not the people who hold all the info. Like each and every single one of us have experience. And so just collectively sharing and working to help move past the barriers and empower one another. So.
Yeah. I didn't mean for this to become a plug for YSS Connection Zone, but it is true that in that space, I guess we could say that it's just a good job has been done to have it very equal. And I feel like there's just not really this hierarchical level. It's just like everyone is kind of sharing and saying, this is my experience. And just like you said, others are like chiming in with, here's how I handled that, or I'm going through the same thing, which has been really nice to have that kind of just like empathy and practice where people are like, I 100% see that. And I think when we talk about system of care, that's what I believe system of care, how maybe that is meant to function or is like desired to function is like, what can we solve together and what's the real barrier? Like what's the stuff that's like literally that has to be policy change?
Like that, kind of like getting down to the priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So on this topic of like organizational support and networking, you know, the only other thing that I can think of as like an empowering aspect of this is utilizing what online spaces are available to getting like support, especially from like other peers, you know. So like I've definitely frequented like peer support on Reddit. There's a couple different communities. We have obviously the YSS Connection Zone Discord, but also like if you don't know any online spaces, I've been to like Pride events and then gone around to different booths and like just started talking to some of our like community partners and building connections that way, which I think is really helpful. So other like local festivals and events and things where different community partners are showing up could be another great way.
Yeah, like the availability isn't just on an online platform. It's also just like you're able to do that by just going out. It doesn't even have to be at an event. You can just go around and talk to other people and see like, hey, like how are things going? Like talk to strangers in a safe way.
Yeah,
in a safe way.
I was gonna say.
Like talk to your community partners.
Yeah.
So that like you can one get your like organization known, but also see like where the commonalities are and these barriers that you both can possibly go through. Or if you have a barrier and you come up with a barrier at like a tabling event, or you want to network with other organizations that are doing things similar to you, you can see how they've gone like through those, or like have their resources on hand that you don't know about. Because like you said, Mordecai, we are not the knowledge keepers. And like if someone else were to go out and do that, they're not the knowledge keeper either. There's always opportunity to learn more about what's going on. And that's how you network and become like a unified organization or like a unified system supporting the same thing.
I love it.
This makes me feel things because like I just really believe that all these community partners, all of us who are like serving maybe even the same population, we shouldn't be in competition with one another.
Agreed.
Like we should be working collaboratively. We should be like working together to serve the people that we're serving best, because we all have their best interests at heart, right? And so it's not about like, oh, we do it better over here, you there, you know, like, or wherever it is, right? It's really about like, okay, cool, you can offer this and you know about this, that's awesome. So I have this youth who's absolutely like needing that. Let's connect them with you. Like, how can we help get that person taken care of? And like,
it's not about who does it
with
better.
Our community.
It's how we can better help the people that we're working for.
Yes.
I agree. Well, that's like you asked about policy change. I guess that would be another thing in there too. It's like ways that organizations could have braided and blended funding, meaning that there's not all these bindings right around the financial side of it. It's like there's a chunk of money. How can all y'all, so say for example it was Eugene or Lane County, how can all y'all who help this demographic come together and split this the way it needs to go, but this way the youth and family that you're trying to serve, they're getting the best experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like a whole conversation within itself is like,
yes, it is.
We got to move where the money goes because that's how we're able to do what we do. But like, what if money wasn't an issue, which what a world that would be. But if money wasn't an issue, like how could we best support each other or work together with other organizations to have those families feel supported? But with like the way that the money is divvied up, it is in a sense kind of like a competition of I need this money or this rural county doesn't get it, kind of thing. And the rural counties need it a lot more than we do because the resources are lower just with how spread out everything is. And it's not a bad thing at all. That's just the availability of what's out there. So how can we change that or like support them out there when we're here in like a bigger city, if you will?
Yeah,
I feel a lot of love for our rural communities because I feel like they really trying out there, running on limited resources. So,
and in no way saying that they're doing a bad job. It's just a struggle through and through.
And we see you. If you're listening, hello.
So I would love if we could segue into our next topic, which is cultural boundaries and equity and some of the barriers that we face to reach success in that aspect.
Yeah. So I note that some of the barriers that I've experienced is in some of the spaces in advocating for youth and young adults in a lot of these like committees per se, or just like spaces for advocating for these. It is long and it's politics. So it's not very exciting. It is very just like, dude, sometimes like my eyes just gloss over and it's just like, oh yeah, I forgot I was actually here. But that's just because like I'm waiting for my chance to actually speak and advocate for the youth that I want to advocate for. And sometimes it goes down to the wire and it's like the last 15 to 30 minutes going like, hey, so is there anything that y'all wanted to say about that? And I was like, I actually have a lot to say, and it's not going to take this amount of time because we have to do the next thing. Like we're not the only thing on the agenda. You're asking us because it feels like you have to, not because you're genuinely interested about the problems or the issues that are at hand. It's you're crossing off a box on a list. So exactly. And it doesn't feel like we're actually being heard because you want us to say what we need to say. Yeah. It feels like we're talking because we have to, like just cross that off. And so it kind of makes me lose a little bit of trust, but also it's the ability that we're able to do this over and over and over again allows me to get that space to where it's still kind of there. I just don't know where my words are going anymore.
I hear what you're saying. Like, when youth and youth peer support specialists get those opportunities, right? They tend to be at that end of the meeting. It's like, well, when we do share those experiences and challenges, where's the follow through? Or like where did this impact policy if it was supposed to?
Yeah.
Did it just end up going on the agenda notes? Like and you know what is really awesome that you say that is like many youth have said that have gone through like sometimes we hold like think tanks or like work groups and stuff, and they say like, well, where's this gonna go?
Yeah.
And I've kind of learned as a peer over time now to kind of say, well, do you want to share your experience knowing that potentially there's not going to be a response, potentially there won't be change? Are you still comfortable and do you consent to sharing this experience out of the hope it will impact change? And I've learned like over time, like sometimes you just have to be real about that. And I think talking about the cultural boundaries and equity, well, that's where kind of like in our first topic too, where you can feel the inequities and you can feel not taken seriously in your role. Because when you see those spaces do that, right, and they place you at the end of an agenda, it's like you're allowed in the space, but you're not allowed that voice. Where's the agency and where's the, I guess, follow through would be it. So those are barriers, right? We're just talking barriers.
Yeah.
Those are things that can get in the way a little bit.
So how do we, because part of it too, I know in some spaces, like it can feel super intimidating for certain people to speak up, to even be in. So like, how do we create more of a welcoming environment where maybe there's like more representation or there's more inclusion at every step of the way? People elevating other people's voices. Like, how do we get there?
I think a big part of it also goes back to support, right? Like I want to show up to support, and I know that we all care about these things, but also like sometimes they're at very inconvenient times. So how can I show up and when can I show up? Having that like time convenience and then the ability for people to actually show up who genuinely want to support because they're able to. So when all of those people come up, we can see that it's more than just me going rah, 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 rah kind of thing. It's more than just me. I just have the time availability to do this.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. So like it not being just your voice. Yeah. Really like.
We have multiple perspectives, multiple demographics of just the same issue coming up, but it's not just the one person doing it.
Gosh, again, we're going back to the connection zone, but that does remind me of the connection zone because like in that space, it's a diverse group and we're hearing that even through the diversity, there is common challenges, common barriers, common things. And so I like that. I've often even wondered about that for myself in my position, how oftentimes it's just me that's supposed to be like the representative of youth, voice / engagement. A, that's a lot of pressure, but B, I cannot be the end all be all or the gatekeeper on that. It's like in a dream world, I suppose I would have, a group of YSS with me or a group of youth with me that they're actually at the forefront. So here I'm invited to the table and now I've brought all y'all to it as well.
Right. And that's, I think, an important part too, is that like we shouldn't be speaking for other people necessarily, but basically like handing the microphone to their voice, or if we can take like direct quotes from them and like sharing that with their permission.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Elevating their voice.
Right.
Yeah.
Man. So I think too, a part of this is, I mean, it goes central to what we do in our work, which is part of it being an advocate. Like that's a huge part. Not only, I mean, man, if you didn't have a lot of advocacy skills beforehand, like you're gonna learn them in the role.
You gonna learn,
you know?
Sure.
You gonna learn.
Either for like the people you're working with, but also like for yourself, like learning how to like use your voice and work towards self-advocacy. Because I can imagine, like, you know, if you don't see a lot of people with shared experiences who are speaking about certain things, it can be kind of like isolating to think, oh, I'm the only one that has this.
Yes.
But like at the same time, you also have to be, when you can, to be brave to speak on your behalf of what your experience is. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's such a complicated thing, right? Because safety is not always guaranteed at all levels of self-advocacy.
Exactly. While we were doing the planning for this episode, Mordecai, you asked me like, well, what were the things that had to happen to get me in a place where I'm more comfortable in kind of like speaking up or talking or whatever. You know, obviously my experience would be being a woman of color. And oftentimes in the spaces I occupy right now, it is predominantly, you know, white folks that are present. And so I have definitely felt like my voice when I've said things has been less important. Maybe even like people will hear the idea and then repeat it themselves and et cetera. But things that have got me kind of where I've grown a lot, especially from when I first started this job, was other folks to kind of just like be a really good ally and like take time to spotlight me. Like they would say, oh, like Chrissy, we know that you're like representing, you know, you got Youth Era, you know, how, like what would be your perspective on this topic? And like really actually shining the light and like kind of the same that I would want to do for a youth. Having people do that for me has been really empowering and just showing me like, hey, it is okay that I'm in this space and it is okay. And my thoughts and experiences do matter. So I think like empowerment comes from if you can be that for somebody, but also somebody being that for you, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of like a step process.
I don't know how to say this in light of like putting the box of barrier and empowerment into it, but I was just, when you were sharing this, it just kind of made me think about how like, so in workplaces in the past, like I would never come out as trans. Like right. I had done it once and then I was like, okay, well that's that. And I'm never doing that ever again. And so like, I wasn't out as trans until this job because there's always been so much fear and just the reactions that people have given me have like just not been great at all. Right. And so it's been wild to be in this position and in this job and to still feel valued and welcomed at every level and that I'm not seen as like being different or treated different for my gender identity. Right. And so like, I think that is so important too, that like, and that kind of goes back into like organizational support as well, that like you are seen and respected for who you are and like welcomed for who you are. So.
Hundo P.
I love that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It truly means a lot, like to, and I believe we said this in other episodes as well, like the ability and availability to be unapologetically you allows you to feel so much more comfortable and a lot safer to do the work that you are able to do. And you're really like able to excel in such higher areas because you're not feeling like you're like walking on ice or like you're being perceived a certain way. So I don't know how to show up or how to act. If you have that availability, there it is, to be you, like that is what we want to promote here. And that's also what we want to show the youth that we work for as well, is that you gotta be unapologetically, you gotta be the most genuine version of yourself. Mm-hmm. And the people who are going to stick around, that's your support system.
Yeah. I love that. This is reminding me of a conversation that I had So I've got some friends and they have a young son who's just kind of going through it right now. But we talked about that a little bit about like, how do you actually like show up like that? Like where, you know, like for me, it's just been over time. I'm now an adult and all this stuff. But what I found, because I'm thinking about for the listeners right now, like we're talking about success, and really this is just putting the icing on the cake around, you've got to be able to show up authentically. But how? And I think a centering on your values and a centering on like, okay, just the same as we talked about that whole success process, right? You're going to fail. There's going to be ups and downs. So maybe today you're not at that place where you're like speaking up in the meeting, or you're not in the place, but you know that you're on that path and you know it's a value of yours. So you keep holding on. You're doing the inner work, right? We're talking about also like needing to have that access to mental health and self-care, et cetera. You're doing that inner work, which ultimately is going to feed out. And then one day, next thing you know, you're somebody who's speaking up, you're taking up that time, you're handing the mic to the youth, you're holding those focus groups, right? So just kind of tying that back in.
That's the journey of success.
I know, because I really liked that, how it kind of just really all ties in and ties into our past episodes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of that too is like one of these episodes you had talked about like not feeling like you could show up in that space,
right,
you know, and speak to your experience, that you didn't think that that was valid enough. Well, I just want to say to everybody that you are enough.
Yes.
Whoever you are is beautiful just the way you are. And we're so glad that you are here. And that authenticity is your superpower.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like that is what's going to like open up so many doors, because who you are is your gift. And that's what's going to help you connect with your youth. That's going to help you show up in so many beautiful ways in your community. Yeah. And so one thing I was thinking about with this is that like you were saying like, how do we get there? How do we be authentic? I think one of the barriers to authenticity is fear, right? So how do we combat fear? I mean, that's a process, obviously, right? And that's part of that like self-love journey, I think, which kind of connects back to last episode. We're talking about
I like it too.
Oneself.
I like it too because it's like in some of our notes we also have like have grace for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take time.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not something that just snap of the fingers. And all of us are on the journey. That's what's awesome. Like even once you've accomplished a goal, right? New goals appear. It reminds me of video games.
You're never done.
You're never done, right? It's like you beat the game and now there's another boss, right? But that's how it is. And so it's like, how, you know, just as Mordecai is telling you all, you know, you matter in these things and your authenticity, having that grace for yourself too, and like that understanding that it is a process and everyone is in their own process. And that's the beauty of it all. And as challenges come and failures come, that's part of it too. And welcoming that, just like the stages of change, right? You're in that upward cycle.
Yeah. It's all about resiliency too. Like you can't just let it stop you from like one or two. Like it is daunting, but that's also like where self-care comes in, right?
Yes.
You got to take care of you when you get knocked down, right?
Yes.
It's that dusting yourself off process. That is that self-care and what that looks like. And so like, it's important to keep that in mind. So like if you're down and you're feeling burnt out, or like even if you have this compassion fatigue from like overworking, and like you're starting to feel like all of these things that are coming up and it feels like it's piling on top of you, you're getting knocked down. So how are you going to dust yourself off? Is it taking a vacation? Is it taking that time? Is it utilizing your mental health resources that you have on hand right now? Like, what does that look like and what does that feel like?
And the biggest thing that I can say in regards to that is like how imperative it is to be planning ahead. Like, don't wait until you're already done and like burnt out and you don't give a F about your job.
Yeah.
You know, like
we need you. We need you.
So like do that today. Do that now. You know, how can you take a minute to just be with your breath? How can you, you know, just take 5 minutes to do something
Grounding.
that you enjoy, you know, like
something you enjoy.
Something that maybe used to bring you joy if you're not feeling a lot of joy these days, like something that you can tap into that feels like play, that feels like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying cooking right now. I make soup every Sunday.
Yeah.
And that has
Super
brought
Sunday?
me
Soupy Sunday.
Soup Sunday, man. It has done me wonders. And just like, okay, it is something that I'm trying new. I'm able to feel like vulnerable in doing it because none of me and my roommates really know how to cook. So, but like we have this ability to grow and learn together. That is something that is not a part of any of the problems that we have going back into the quote unquote real world, right?
Yeah.
We're learning together and we're both starting from square one. So we're able to support each other in that way of learning how to cook, even though it's just boiling water and some vegetables. It's a lot more than just that. We're having this shared connection of just like, we're trying something new and we're able to support each other every step of the way in doing so.
It's beautiful. There's a lot of analogy and metaphor there because you guys
Soup
are
Sunday
also
changed
the
my
soup-
life, man.
Yeah, I really like that. I also like kind of just sharing some things that we're doing that fall into kind of self-care and like how the different variances of self-care there are. Because like in my apartment right now, it's been a new self-care thing to like actually, it's going to sound dull, but like actually instead of just throwing like my coats and like my clothes just like off to the side on the table, I've been like literally taking the time to hang them on the hook, put the things in the laundry. But then now I've noticed like when I get home and the apartment's clean, I'm like, okay, I like this feeling. And I'm starting to feel more and more better doing it every day. And so that is just like a tiny, but it makes me feel good type small care, self-care thing.
Oh, just wait till you start doing it, like aesthetically. Like I started doing that with my sweaters. Like I would just throw them on the floor,
Yeah.
and then I started hanging them up, and I was like, dude, my room is so much cleaner. This is so nice. And then I started color coordinating, and it's like
Yeah.
a gradient in my closet. I was like, oh, this is so nice. I
That's
feel
gratifying. Yeah.
One of the ADHD like mantras that I've been trying to like ingrain into my brain is don't put it down, put it away. Don't put it down, put it away.
See, I love that. Don't
Because
put it down,
it's so easy to just like, yeah, I'll get to it later. And then it's like, oh my God, my entire counter is full.
put everything down.
Yeah, and I didn't put anything away. Yeah. So, right, I love what you said too with like the soup thing. Like that's something you can like look forward to.
Oh,
so, like, it's on the
absolutely.
calendar. You know, if this is happening on Sunday, like awesome.
Yeah, if you got a plan for self-care, you got a plan for self-care. But at least I'm giving my time to do that.
Yes. Yes.
And that shows like that you're also prioritizing yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Because like if you're going to nourish a relationship, like you
Yeah.
have to prioritize time with that person. And so why not do the same thing with yourself? And you are the most important being to yourself because without you, what else exists? Right.
Exactly.
So like you have to take care of yourself.
You're the best version of you, kind of thing. Like we need you.
Yeah. Yes. Which kind of leads into something that we were talking about before this, about like how important it is to invest into yourself.
Yes.
You know, that you are your best investment.
Yeah. Yeah, that topic is so rich around like thinking about it, especially in like just this, we're on this road of success. And I think if you only, this is something I'm like literally learning right now. If I only take the time in which I'm at work to develop myself or educate myself or even think about and be passionate about these values, well, I'm really cheating myself then. But if I see everything I'm doing as literally an investment into me, so maybe I want to take coaching classes, maybe I want to learn more about tarot reading, etc. Like all of these things are an investment back. And so just finding a way, you know, to see that your education and your growth is definitely going to benefit not only like your life, but your career and your way of being a peer support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many like accessible ways to like invest in ourselves. Like it doesn't just have to be like, you know, shelling out a bunch of money and going to a college class or something, right? Like it can literally just be putting on a podcast. Maybe this podcast, just kidding. Right? But like, you know, it could
It
just
is
be
true. Yeah.
putting on a podcast. It could be watching, you know, YouTube University.
Yeah.
Going down the rabbit hole on Google or talking to ChatGPT like it's your best friend. Like there's different ways to receive information and to reflect and to grow.
Yes.
It's really just about finding what works for you.
Yeah. However you like to like digest your information is also like listening, like audiobooks. I just got back like into audiobooks and it's like provided so much more because I hate reading.
Yeah.
I do. And that's just because like the tone for me matters, and me figuring out what the tone is like reading a text message. And I was like, I don't know if this is supposed to be happy or you're mad with the way that my mom puts a ...
Oh, yeah. I know.
And it's like, I love her. She's a boomer and she's kind of old. So it's just like a different thought. She's like, yeah, ... Sounds good. See you later. And I was like, am I in trouble kind of thing?
Yeah.
But like, but it's like, I can't, like, that's how I read every book. But when I have that audiobook on me and just like listening to either like these scholarly articles or the, like, cause like you can have Google just read you scholarly articles, which is really cool. So like it does that voice for you. Having that as like my way of digesting information and continuing education is really important because it allows me to find other ways how I can show up to advocate for the people that I care about and the people that I want to advocate and support.
Right.
Yeah. I love that, you know, you found something that worked for you, right? Like that works for your brain well because you know how you receive and process information.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to someone in a coaching call that I did last night, and they're wanting to put a bunch of information down very quickly. And I'm like, okay, writing might be daunting. All right. So what might make this easier? And this is something that I think can go so well, even for like you wanting to like process your feelings or you want to digest the stories you're telling yourself, you know, maybe using like a speech to text program and just like talking or even just recording your voice and just letting it out, like giving voice to what it is that you're feeling and experiencing and being able to like, bleh, you know, like word vomit all of that out rather than, because sometimes people don't like the whole journaling thing that can be timely or they don't like their handwriting or whatever it is. So really all that to say, like, find what works for you. Find, you know, the way that you best receive information and what's going to go well with your flow. I think we started to talk a little bit about like continuing education. Did y'all have like maybe some suggestions of what would be really good points for youth peer support specialists to be maybe looking into, or like what would be good things to help them continue their education?
TED Talks.
Yeah.
TED Talks.
Like TED and TEDx, not so much TEDx because it's more, they're very different in how they give their information, but TED Talks have done a lot and just not necessarily taking it as is, but providing a different perspective on how things can be perceived. And then that's where I start to kind of do my own digging of just like, okay, like this is how this is taken from this. This is my perspective. Let's find other articles that are kind of in this. And so it gives me a good start point to kind of start my research in things that I'm interested in. It doesn't even have to be peer support. It could be like how to just like manage your time, or they have like a lot of stuff on how to do fashion and like what works and what doesn't work. It's a lot more than just mental health and peer support, or it's about everything. There's one on birding. Like, I'm not watching it yet because I'm not there yet, but I will eventually be like, oh, that's like a sparrow, or I don't know any birds. I can't name any off rip, but it's a lot of that. Like it's a good place for me to start seeing other perspectives and then delving into that.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love that side of like outside, right, of just solely the peer role. Inside the peer role, just thinking about for our Oregon Youth Peer Supports, you know, as you become a certified traditional health worker, you want to make sure that over 3 years' time that you're obtaining your 40 hours of continuing education units, aka CEUs. So I think things that would be important there is talk with your supervisor about making plans for that, so that it doesn't all happen at the end of that 3 years, which I see happen a lot. But think about what's like most important to you as a peer and for your community. You know, maybe take like, actually I can think of an example right now. I have some staff that are working with youth who have developmental delays. And they're wanting to get extra training and help so that they can learn how to best plan with them and what activities are pertinent for them, et cetera. So training like that, or training that's like culturally, you know, specific, or getting you more versed in diversity, equity, and inclusion, those would all be great things to consider. And then, of course, whatever you find that you need to do in your work to be the most successful, that could even look like coaching classes too. So there's a lot of freedom in learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Find your niche and really just
Find it, yeah.
look into like what else is out there about this interest, because the internet is expansive. It is infinite. So if you have an interest in something, guaranteed it exists on the internet somewhere. So find that small, like that's also networking and finding new communities as well.
Straight up, right? And I loved it the other day. We were doing a train the trainer. We were doing it with our staff, and one of our staff talked about, even learning like how to do soundboards and stuff has been like a benefit to them, and then teaching the youth. And see, that's what I'm saying. It's like there's so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to like lean into our own lived experience, but also lean into the experience of those who we're supporting too. To maybe expand our own knowledge on certain things. Like I have a background with an eating disorder, and so I went and I took this course on eating disorder harm reduction. So not only did that help me, that also helped me in supporting those who I'm working with who are, at a certain place in their recovery process, so that I can help them reach their goals, in an informed way. And so like part of that was me, part of that was them. Like, how can I be responsive to their experiences, taking extra training on autism and how I can be, aware of that in the way that I'm, how can I be culturally responsive with those that I'm working with right from the get-go with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it is just being open to being uncomfortable. Like if you ego aside, just go in like, I don't know anything about this. So where can I start? And that's like looking at the populations around you of just like, okay, I work with this youth. He's interested in cars. I know nothing about cars. Let's start looking into like education about cars so I can have this connection with them so we can grow and develop together in that support. And like that has also helped me a lot. And I've also learned a lot about like sports that I never even knew about. Like, well, I mean, I knew of lacrosse, but I never knew anything about it. So he like taught me how to like pass, shoot, and all that kind of stuff with lacrosse. And I was like, I never would have had that opportunity if I didn't just show up and be like, hey man, I got nothing for you here. Like, but you love this, so teach me about it.
Show me. Yeah.
I love your lens. Like, I know nothing. Like showing up, the way that I receive what you said is like showing up and like not prescribing a story to it, to our youth, to their experience, to whatever it is that you're learning. Like how much more, authentic could you show up in that space with that lens? Because you're taking your ego, you're taking any kind of preconceived notions, your schema out of it, and like actually just showing up and just being curious, I think that's really beautiful. I love that, that advice.
Me too.
I want to sit with that. How can I show up knowing nothing more?
It's definitely a space for growth. It allows you to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's bittersweet. This is our final episode, at least for this 6-episode series we did. I would love to invite folks that listen to this, and maybe it'll be even a year from now that they might hear, reach out to us at Youth Era or feel free to leave comments on our videos or comments in our Spotify or join our Discord. We're really wanting to build community so that, as we've talked about, ways to help, peers be successful. We know community and networking is it. And so we're trying to build that. And episode 6.
We did it.
We did it.
That was a journey. That was a journey in itself.
It was a journey. Yeah. Hey,
that's success.
Actually, we should maybe close this out with what do we feel personally was successful over the 6 episodes.
Whoa.
I know.
Well, okay. One, just like from never having podcasted before to now, I feel like, oh wow, I know all these ins and outs that I never knew before. Like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But one of the the successes, I think, was being in the Zoom for the connection zone and just seeing this group of people coming together and feeling so comfortable to share their experiences and their thoughts and really like authentic feelings about things. And I
Yes.
was like just amazed at the vulnerability that was shown there. And that's not even anything on my part. It's just the community that showed that. But I'm so grateful that we were able to help host that space.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
I'm going to piggyback off of that and say, like, the opportunity that we were able to have this podcast and start this space where people can be themselves and like not have any blame or shame or fear of repercussion by saying what their barriers are.
Yeah.
Allowing that and like starting that community is something that I found to be like successful. And I'm glad that we were able to achieve that and continue to build and grow that. Because like it's not going to stop after episode 6. Like the YSS Connection Zone and the Discord will live on.
Yeah.
So like if there are anything else, like if there's anything else from this, just know that like you're able to come to us to say like, hey, I'm having this struggle.
Yeah.
Is there anything that y'all can help me with? And we have a whole community to be like, yeah, let's work this out together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with what both of you have shared. I think an identified success would be the fact that, shout out to our sponsor, but Oregon Health Authority, just the freedom and the ability. And again, so we talked about policy earlier, right? Like, so the freedom and the ability to have Oregon Health Authority say, like, we trust Youthera. We trust that you can build a community. You want to build a community. You are the leaders and training and coaching in this. Go forth and do. And to see the success that we've had, that is just it right there. That is success to me. I feel like we've achieved goals and targets, and I think hopefully that we can maybe do another season another time, because we have a lot to share and talk about. But yeah, it's all been a big success for me, for sure.
Yeah, I love this. Thank you to our sponsors.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to Youthera, and thank you to everyone who's been joining and everyone who's been like in the Discord. And, you know, if you're listening, yeah, reach out, join us in our journey on this successful path.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for, giving your time and your energy to us. And I hope that in some level that this has been inspirational to you, that this has felt aligning, that maybe you felt seen, heard, validated in your experience.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Just a lot of gratitude.
Well, that's episode 6.
Yeah, that's we done did it. We're not sure how to end this now, because I feel like we've ended this like 3 times. It's like, all right, so now what? Because we don't want to finish.
I know,
Let it never be done.
But I mean, hey,
join the connection zone,
yeah,
right?
it
'Cause
doesn't
we'll be
end
there.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's more to this than just here. So yeah, come say hi, come say what's up. We will be here. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in the connection zone.
Thank you.
Stay connected, y'all.
Stay connected.
Later.